So in other words, America almost attacked a country and killed thousands, untold thousands of people over an attack that may never have happened in the first place.
And the saga continues to unfold a whole year and a half later, with the truth continuing to come out regarding the alleged chemical attack in Douma in April of 2018 that was immediately blamed on Syria's President Bashar al-Assad's forces, despite there being no credible evidence whatsoever that any such chemical attack had even taken place, let alone that the Syrian army was the culprit. Never mind that there had been no time for an investigation yet, while new evidence casting serious doubt upon the official Western narrative was continually surfacing by the day. Within the week, Donald Trump had ordered a missile strike against Syria, and the U.S. coalition launched over 100 missiles at Damascus. At the time, Tucker Carlson was the only mainstream news voice questioning the nonsensical official narrative, stating the obvious, that there was no real evidence of any attack, let alone that Assad was to blame if there was, and that it looked like it could well have been faked. And he is once again the only face on fake stream television news to give the people the real scoop on this story, which is still developing a whole year and a half later. But before playing his show, a quick recap. At the time of the unprovoked U.S. airstrikes against Syria, the evidence supporting the claim that evil Assad had intentionally gassed the very Syrian civilians he was in the process of liberating from brutal al-Qaeda terrorist occupation was nothing but video footage and images, both filmed and released by the White Helmets, purporting to show victims of the alleged attack suffering and being treated in the Douma hospital. Only problem is, it is a verifiable fact that members of the White Helmets are jihadist terrorists and that the group itself acts as the propaganda arm of al-Qaeda in Syria. They are nothing more than a terrorist construct. Furthermore, there were no witnesses to any chemical attack taking place, as multiple reporters from various countries sent into Douma later discovered. Top White House officials claimed to have evidence of a sarin gas attack which they never released, but reports by the chemical watchdog organization, the OPCW, tasked with investigating the alleged attack, found no trace of sarin gas, and rather concluded that it was chlorine gas that had likely been used, proving that the White House claims to having obtained independent evidence were completely fabricated. To top it off, the alleged victims caught on camera in the propaganda video, such as the young child Hassan Diab, who later testified at The Hague, explained that these people weren't victims of a chemical attack at all, but were rather grabbed and doused with water in front of a white helmet cameraman, while an instigator started yelling, chemical attack, in order to create a state of panic for the camera. While doctors treating the alleged victims that day verified in interviews that none of the people being treated that were caught on film were exhibiting signs of toxic gas exposure, but rather asphyxiation from dust caused by the shelling and bombing which was ongoing and targeting the terrorists. But then the OPCW, despite contradicting the original White House sarin gas narrative and offering no evidence of an attack either by sarin or chlorine gas in their interim report, turned around and concluded in their final report last year that not only did the evidence suggest a chlorine gas attack, but one that was actually carried out via barrel bombs dropped from the sky, thereby implicating the Syrian army. A conclusion that seemingly all too conveniently fit right into the nonsensical official Western narrative, despite all the numerous evidence to the contrary which appeared to have simply been intentionally ignored in the report. As it turns out, that is exactly what happened, according to two OPCW whistleblowers, with the reports being completely whitewashed by upper management, ignoring the actual findings and conclusions of the investigative team, which were the ones on the ground doing the investigation. This was done in order to form the desirable conclusion for the US, UK, and Turkey. These whistleblowers have confirmed what most of us already knew, that the OPCW suppressed all the evidence indicating there was no chemical attack actually took place, which thereby implicated the White Helmets and other terrorists in staging the hoax, exactly as Russia and independent media has been saying all along. The most recent evidence to surface in this scandal is an internal OPCW email published by WikiLeaks on November 23rd, which further supports these conclusions. Now, 19 months later, and Tucker is once again the only voice in American mainstream news putting the truth about the Douma event and the OPCW scandal in front of the American people. I have absolutely no idea why Fox News is allowing him to do so, but I am certainly excited to see the truth about Syria get mainstream coverage however it happens and for whatever the reasons. So here's the Tucker Carlson show covering it from November 25th, including an interview with the journalist responsible for breaking the story of the second whistleblower in early November.
Well, despite the president's repeated efforts to get them out, American troops remain deployed in parts of Syria. If Washington has its way, they will be there until you are old, or even longer, forever. But it could be worse. 19 months ago, Washington was demanding that the U.S. government topple the Assad government completely. Must do it now. The justification for this was a supposed chemical weapons attack in the town of Douma. Now, no one in Washington had seen the attack. No American had seen it. Nobody in Congress could tell you what proof existed that the attack had actually taken place or that Assad's government was behind it rather than some other faction, and there were many, in the country's civil war. But it didn't matter that there was literally no evidence. Everybody in Washington began agitating for regime change war immediately, and especially on the left. Bill Kristol and Max Boot and everyone at MSNBC and CNN, they were completely for it. This show was not for it. We didn't deny the attack happened. We just told people to be skeptical. Universal bipartisan agreement on anything is usually the first sign that something deeply unwise is about to happen, if only because there is nobody left to ask skeptical questions. And we should be skeptical of this, starting with the poison gas attack itself. All the geniuses tell us that Assad killed those children. But do they really know that? Of course they don't really know that. They're making it up. They have no real idea what happened. And now the same people who brought you a dying American middle class, undefended American borders, and endless pointless wars in countries you could not find on a map are telling the president he's got to depose Assad for reasons that are both unclear and demonstrably dishonest. You got to depose Assad immediately. Wait a second. How did it work when we deposed the last 4 Arab leaders? And wait a second. Didn't the Assad government, evil as it may be, protect all the Christians? Shut up, they said. You got to do it now. Well, fortunately, President Trump limited his response to another wave of missile strikes, rather than sending U.S. troops in to topple yet another government in the region. But now it looks like even that response may have not been justified at all. So last spring, the official report of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which is the group that monitors chemical weapons globally, said the Douma attack was caused by 2 chlorine gas canisters that were dropped from an airplane. That would suggest the Assad government was behind the attack. Okay. But then last May, a leaked internal document showed that one of the OPCW's top analysts disagreed with that conclusion. He thought the canisters were placed by hand by someone on the ground, which would make it a completely different event. Now, this week, WikiLeaks has published an email from a member of the OPCW's fact-finding team. That email accuses the organization of altering investigators' original findings to make evidence of an attack look more conclusive than it actually was. Sound familiar? Yeah, we've seen this movie before, with tragic consequences. Yet another OPCW whistleblower has argued that on-the-ground evidence points against an attack happening at all. So in other words, America almost attacked a country and killed thousands, untold thousands of people over an attack that may never have happened in the first place, that powerful people may very well be lying about. And by the way, under a different president, and whatever you think of Trump, this is true, under a different president, say Hillary Clinton, being advised by the Obama foreign policy team, Samantha Power, and a lot of people like Samantha Power with long track records of unwise, indeed stupid decision-making, under that administration, we probably would have invaded. We recently spoke all about this story because we think it's important with Jonathan Steele. He's a former chief foreign correspondent for The Guardian. Here's the conversation. I don't want to overstate this. A lot of us, well, not a lot, some of us, this show, had suspicions from the outset that there wasn't much evidence this had actually happened. What do we now know?
Well, we now know from this whistleblower who prefers to call himself Alex, we know his real name, and we've got proof that he did work at the OPCW. He was an inspector, one of the team of about 9 people who went to Damascus and to Douma to pick up samples on the ground and to talk to witnesses and check the whole thing out. Now, he took these samples, but the main point is that chlorine gas degrades rapidly in the air, so that coming in 2 weeks later, you wouldn't find anything. But what you would find is that the gas can contaminate or affect other chemicals in the natural environment,
yes, so-called
chlorinated organic chemicals. But the difficulty is that they exist anyway in the natural environment anyway, and in water and so on. And so the crucial thing is the levels. Were there higher levels of chlorinated organic chemicals found after the alleged gas attack than there would have been in the normal environment? And when they got back to the Netherlands, to The Hague, where the OPCW has its headquarters, the samples were sent off to designated laboratories. Then there was a weird silence developed. Nobody told the inspectors what the results of the analysis was. And it was only by chance that the inspector found out that 3 weeks earlier the results had come in and they showed no difference at all. There were no higher levels of chlorinated organic chemicals in the areas where the alleged attack happened, where there's some suspicious cylinders had been found by opposition activists. And so it didn't seem possible that there could have been a gas attack because the levels were just the same as in the natural environment.
Well, I'm confused by 2 points. So first, we were told, and again, sternly lectured, that the U.S. government had absolute evidence that this gas attack took place, A. B, if OPCW knew that there wasn't actually evidence, why did it take a whistleblower to tell the rest of us?
Well, on the first point, I mean, they just rushed. It was rushed to judgment. The missile strikes, which included British and French missiles as well as the American ones, happened about 2 or 3 days after the alleged gas attack, when no inspectors had been on the ground. There was no evidence on the ground. So it was just fabricated, as it were, the reason to go in. It was a rush to judgment. But the second point is that there was no real reason why Assad would make an attack at this stage, because he was already capturing most of Douma and was about to capture the rest of it. He didn't need to go in for a chemical gas attack at that stage.
We've been lied to. We've been manipulated. We knew it at the time. Thanks so much for coming on tonight. I appreciate that. It's a fascinating story. It's an important story. I hope it gets picked up by others apart from just this show. Jonathan Steele, thank you.
Well, there you have it. They lied to us straight from Tucker Carlson on Fox News, and we did know it at the time. And yeah, it was fabricated. The whole thing was fabricated. It was pretty obvious from the get-go, but it's pretty much been absolutely proven at this point. So it's great to see that it's getting a little bit of mainstream coverage. I'm with Tucker. I hope other outlets will cover it, but I highly doubt that will be the case. I honestly am pretty surprised that Tucker's allowed to get away with saying as much as he does and putting as much truth out there on this particular story as he has done so far, being on Fox News. And one last thing to wrap up this video with, I want to point out that at the beginning of last month, just over a month ago, on the 1st of November, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced that the White Helmets, along with their terrorist affiliates, were once again preparing new chemical provocations in Syria. And he said that they are continually getting new evidence that the White Helmets and the affiliated terrorists in Idlib province are planning to carry out such provocations or false flag attacks, and that they continue to receive information on the ongoing preparations. The relevance on this right now is that in the past several weeks, the Syrian army has been preparing and is now beginning to launch a ground offensive into southern Idlib. This is always when the terrorists choose to carry out these attacks to try to lure the U.S. into attacking, is when they are on the verge of defeat. So keep your eyes open. It's always a possibility whenever the Syrian army begins to launch offensive into Idlib. It's the terrorists' last stronghold, so it's definitely a possibility. So keep your eyes open. Like always, question the official narrative. Don't fall for the lies. And if you appreciate the information, like, share, subscribe. Help get the word out there. Till next time, this has been Jason.
So in other words, America almost attacked a country and killed thousands, untold thousands of people over an attack
that may never have happened in the first place.
There was no evidence on the ground, so it was
Liars.
just fabricated, as it were, the reason to go in. It was a rush to judgment.
We've been lied to. We've been manipulated.